Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H virtual event space. You are tuned into Zen and the Art of Seeing, hosted by Sony. And for that, I'd like to welcome my wonderful friend, a mentor, a outstanding family man, wonderful photographer, and totally peaceful spirit. Chris, you're everything, man. What's going on? Chris Orwig, welcome.
Hey, so great to be here. And you should have added to my introduction a goofball too, because we both are a little bit of goofballs. And so
Totally.
while this is Zen, which we'll really dig into, there is some lightness, brightness, and levity to this one. So I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. I'm so excited to share about this and how this can help us create better photos. So
I love it. I've been looking forward to it for a long time now, Chris. So I'm going to let you do your thing.
okay.
I'll see you in a little bit for some Q&A, and if you pop up any questions in the middle of this, I'll be right here riding shotgun.
That sounds wonderful. Welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful and excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen and open up some slides, and I'll go back and forth between sharing and talking a couple times. And the topic for today is this idea of Zen and the art of seeing. And who this is for anyone who's feeling stress or uncertainty, they're distracted, they're going through grief or loss, and they're a photographer or a creator of any kind, really. And they want to explore how you can convert chaos to calm or loss to hope or pain to healing. And I found that with the right point of view, photography can really help us kind of metabolize or process or transform, alchemize a lot of tough stuff in life and to make it better. The goal of this session is photographic and exploring how we can create better photos, but also live a better life, because I believe really wholeheartedly that life and photography, they're really closely intertwined. And we're going to talk about Zen in a broad way. On one side, Zen is a Japanese school of Mahayana Buddhism, which emphasizes the value of meditation and intuition. And then maybe on the other side, you could say the word Zen more kind of colloquially to just say it means peaceful and calm. You might be like, oh, that dude is so Zen, or that was such a Zen moment. And so we're going to blend those two. This isn't scholastic. This isn't academic. It is anchored in this idea of what Zen Buddhism is, but I'm also going to bring in other influences and sources along the way. And the reason is, here's our first outside resource, is because as Henry Miller, the author, said, one's destination truly isn't a place, but a new way of looking at things. And so we're going to explore how we can go on this journey and see things in a new way. And the side of the art of seeing has to do with seeing a tree and its roots, so seeing what's visible and what's also underground, and utilizing that depth in seeing to create content. And in my case, I do a lot of portraits like the one on the right. And I did a search for the art of seeing, and a definition that came up, which I liked, was to observe and perceive the world with a heightened sense of awareness and appreciation. And so we're going to explore how this concept of Zen or peace or calm can help us to have this heightened sense of awareness, of presence, and appreciation and gratitude. Because I really believe that photography does that, right? It heightens our senses. It gives us more awareness. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have noticed that. And then we appreciate things, a tree, a person, a lake, whatever it is. And so in our photographic journey with whatever we're photographing, in this case, a landscape that I captured, I've come to believe that one of the most important tools that we can bring on a shoot is inner clarity. And when we're in tune with what's going on inside of us, that shapes the photographs that we make. And Marcel Proust put it this way. He said that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but having new eyes. Again, this idea of the art of seeing, that it's not just like, well, I'm going to go to this landscape and that one and this one, but it's like, okay, well, how am I really truly present? How am I appreciating this? How am I seeing this? And how am I seeing this in a new way? And the beautiful thing about photography is it helps us do that. I mean, it like gives you a new vision for the world because it blocks off certain things from the frame. You focus, you have certain focal lengths and all the things. And part of this comes back to this idea of what we're bringing with us to when we're doing photography, whether it's street or food or architecture, but is this idea that it's really internal what we bring. I love this Emerson quote. You may have already read it, but I'll just read it again, but which is, though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, we must carry it with us or we find it not. And it's this idea that what we're seeing in the world in a lot of ways can be a reflection of who we are on the inside. And if we carry or bring beauty with us, we suddenly see that in the outside world. And the reason I'm kind of bringing in Emerson or a couple of these other quotes is just to contextualize this. And again, it's anchored in this idea of Zen, but we're contextualizing it in this space of photography and of just art and creativity. And the reason this is so important, I think, is because the camera truly sees objectively, just sees like what's there. But through craft and vision, which I've talked about in a couple previous webinars, if you haven't seen those, maybe worth going back. I talk about this image and this process. But the point is that the camera will just says this is there. But what we have to do as artists, as photographers, is bring to something our own voice, tap into something inside of us, and then make that an external reality, which means we go from kind of a this to a that scenario. And ultimately, what this is about is this idea of capturing what's invisible. This is a quote from the author of The Little Prince, and it's this idea that what is truly essential, it's invisible. And what is the essence? When you really look at a photograph, we can analyze it and we can figure it out and layer on top of it graphics and things, but ultimately it's a feeling. It's something we feel in our soul, our heart. And the same thing I think is true with music, with poetry, with painting, with ceramics, and the list goes on. But so what happens in visual art is we tend to think it's about the visual. But what I'm encouraging today is to step back from that for a moment and just say, okay, we're looking for invisible things, because what is essential is invisible to our eyes and also our cameras. Our cameras just can't pick up feeling. And that's why two photographers can photograph the same thing and it turns out differently. It's because of what's going on internally. And so while this idea of Zen and the art of seeing may seem kind of up in the clouds, what I'm trying to do here is sort of bring it down to earth and to anchor it a little bit. And I have obviously a lot of slides, but Derek, I just thought it might be worthwhile to take a pause, because part of Zen is pause and listening and slowing down, and just see if you have any thoughts or questions or reflections. And I'll go ahead and just stop sharing my screen for a minute and, pass it over to you. Anything coming in for you or anyone else?
Yes, if anybody does have anything, feel free to throw it in. I don't want to steal all the thunder here, but I think the thing for me with Zen is realizing the correlation between the person and the photographer. We are one, but one feeds off of the other. As your life changes and as your life goes, your photography goes a lot of times. And I think that tie for me, as my work has gotten more personal and as I realized that, okay, the changes I make as a person reflect my creativity, reflect the photographer I am. And that's where the whole idea of really just tapping into my work in a different level has helped take it to another level. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And let me maybe anchor that, because I agree, which is, I'm just going to go my imagination to New York, because you're in New York. And I remember someone talking to me about this, like you could be walking down the street of New York and you could see your friend across the street and he could just give you a little head nod. And if you just had the worst morning of your life, you would say, dude, what a jerk. Like, dude, this guy is just like, how come he's not giving me the time of day? Like you could be really upset the little head nod. But if you had the best morning of your life, something amazing happened, you just had a great time with a good friend or who knows what, you see me gives a head nod, you can be like, man, how cool that we have this friendship that goes beyond words. And we can just connect with each other across the street. We both know. We know, he knows, I know, he knows. Cool. And so it is that internal state in a moment by moment, but also in a larger thing in life, right? Which I think is what you're alluding to, which is like, as we shift and change, like if you really want to up level your photography, of course you got to learn technique, of course you got to learn skill, blah, blah, blah. But that stuff's easy. The hard stuff is to figure out, who am I? What's going on inside of me? How do I then bring that into what's happening? So I could then photograph something that connects with that, because if it connecting with me, there's a good chance it connects with others. Same thing with writing, like writers or songwriters, they'll write something very personal and then all of a sudden millions of people love it, and the reason is because it was personal. But if they write something really shallow and impersonal, no one really likes it, because it's like, doesn't connect, doesn't land. And so tapping into that inner source, is that similar to what you're saying? Does that resonate?
Dude, you articulated that way better than I ever could. It's kind of like you ever think something and you're like, I have to be the only person that's ever thought this. And then you see a meme
Yes.
about it and you're like, oh
Yes.
my God, it must be a thing. Like it's not just me. And I
Yes.
think that's what makes that the relatable nature of what we feel. It's what ties us to other, perfect example before, I'll let you continue after this.
Yeah.
You ever in the car with a bunch of people and you can play the greatest song that nobody in the car has ever heard, but it's like you're in with a group. Nobody wants to hear this great song that no one's ever heard. They want to hear a recognizable song, even if it's a cheesy song, even if it's a song that no one would admit to liking. If it's something that everybody knows, it's like the first song that's going to come to mind is Sweet Caroline. It's like when Sweet Caroline comes on,
Yeah.
everyone knows, how the words go.
Yeah.
It's almost just the relatable nature of it weighs so much more than, oh, this is a great song.
Yes. And I'm going to pick up on that. My daughter had a junior high, seventh grade kind of chorus concert. One of the kids sang Sweet Caroline. And so once he did, the whole audience was like, bum, bum, bum. But what made it so good, and it was like this whole audience interactive thing versus someone before the kid sang like this abstract, like Broadway musical song no one knew. And so everyone was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But then Sweet Caroline came on, the audience just lit up and leaned in. But I think the key was this little seventh grade kid sang it like he meant it, and he just leaned into it, was having so much fun. So we as an audience were like, yeah, I mean, if this guy can be brave enough to get up there, we're going to join.
You
And
fed
that
off the energy.
we fed off that, right? And so I think he had that, and that's what great actors do, and all these performing art people do. They tap into something really true to who they are, shows up. Because if he had sang, Sweet Caroline, bum, 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 we would just been like, oh my gosh, feel sorry for this kid. He's dreadful. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it is, in that collaboration and community and connection, all those things really matter. And it's context related too. Like, I think if you and I were hanging out and we were having a deep conversation and one of us turned on that song, we'd be like, dude, what's going, like, that's not the right, like in a group setting, sure. But maybe the abstract song might be like, there's this weird song I've heard. I really love it. Just listen to it. I think it might be cool. And then I'm like, wow, I'm able to hear it differently because of the setting, right? So
Totally. Time and place.
yeah, time and place. But I think all of that stuff, set and setting, all those things, it's like you tap into, okay, you're listening to your intuition. That's what Zen's a lot about. And then you trust it. Great artists listen and trust. And
I
so let
love
me
that.
jump back to slides.
Yeah, definitely.
But that was cool. That was a cool way to integrate it. And that's what I want to do, is make this integrated. The last thing I want this to be is up in the clouds. So I want to do a little mini introduction just so you have context in case we haven't met. But my name's Chris Orwig. I am a Sony artisan of imagery, along with a lot of other great photographers and filmmakers. And I've written a couple books, last two, one on portraiture, one on creativity. I do coaching and mentoring for people in a one-on-one basis, which I love, love, love doing. And you can find that there. The gear that I use is primarily pretty simple. I tend to use one camera and a couple lenses, an iPhone for all my commercial and editorial and personal work. And then I'll show you a slide now with just like a lot of the gear. I have a lot of different lenses. And so with a lot of choices, and the reason I wanted to include this was a little bit, I'm not going to talk about gear too much, except that as photographers, we have a lot of complicated, interesting gear. And part of this is bringing intention to what we're using and how we're using it. And then to highlight just some of the photographs, this is an R5 with 24-70, whether I'm shooting, this case, obviously just from the edge of the lake. This is from a helicopter, photographing this island in California, traveling, or portraiture, commercial portrait stuff, or family portraits. And just to kind of highlight the photographic side. And with all of that, what I'm trying to do is bring a certain level of intention, and we'll get to that a little bit more. I'm a family man. I love adventure, love surfing, being goofy, as I mentioned, hiking, biking, all the things. And so the question is kind of why me? Why am I someone who has something to say about this topic? And really, for my whole life, I've been asking this question of how do we live well? I've been formulating an approach to the art of living. And a lot of that comes from my own healing journey. I have chronic pain, and I've had that for about 30 years. Photography has really helped me in kind of coping with that and even thriving in spite of that. I have a master's in divinity, so I've done a advanced graduate studies in spirituality and stuff. I have really interest in spirituality. I've been meditating for about a decade, practice yoga regularly. I'm a photographer, family man, all those things. So why now? Why is this interesting? Well, I think, T.S. Eliot said this probably 60 years ago now, maybe more. But he said, we're distracted from distractions by distractions. And especially us photographers, we're like squirrel, 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 squirrel. And we're always just looking at what catches our eye. And that is the first and really important part of photography is you say, what's catching my eye? The second part is to do the work of a photographer. But what tends to happen is that we're very visually cued up, cued in, tuned in. And so we're very distractible. And that is kind of a unique thing. And we want to notice, right? But how do we notice maybe with more intention? And why this present moment? Well, I think we just have so many instantaneous inputs from all directions. There's just so much coming at us apart from the distraction stuff. And part of this has to do with a sense of time. And Seneca, the Stoic philosopher and emperor of the time, he said, you must match time's swiftness with your speed in using it. And one of the ways that we deal with time and deal with all this input is we carpe diem. We just like go for it. And in this case, it's like the surfer, like the waves are happening. I'm going out there, I'm dropping in, he's about to tuck into a little barrel. And one approach to our craft is to really hustle and to seek and to search and to seize the day, seize the moment, which is an amazing, powerful way to approach life. But I think a complementary approach, which we can add to how we approach it, is to slow down. And this is a photo of that same moment. I just swam under the water. I took a breath, went down underwater, and slowed myself down. And I like how Marc Reboux, the late French photographer, put it. He said, photography is savoring life intensely at 1/100th of a second. And I think the word savor is one of those words which implies slowing down. So if you savor dark chocolate, you're not just like, dark chocolate, seize the day, eat the whole chocolate bar. You take a little bite of it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. You're just truly, really present. And in Zen Buddhism, being present to the moment, this small little moment we have is really what it's all about. Bob Dylan put it another way. He said that the purpose of art is to stop time. And when there's something happening in cameras, we're stopping at this now maybe 1/1000th of a second, that it stops what's happening. And we can really say, what is going on, and look at something in a unique way, or look at someone in a unique way, whoever it is, young or old, or bride and groom, or painter, or stranger, or celebrity, my daughter, my mom, good friends. And in these moments, in the craft of photography, whatever our subject matter is, I like to think of that idea as savoring moments, and really stopping time for ourselves and for other people. The Zen Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, I actually have a typo there, I spelled that wrong, but his name, but he said, if you are calm and still enough, you can reflect the mountain, the blue sky, the moon exactly as they are. You reflect whatever you see exactly as it is, without distorting anything. And what he really encourages people to do is to think about like your inner landscape, or inner workings of your life, like a mountain lake or something. And if it's windy, it's cloudy, and it's not going to reflect anything. But when it's calm and still, one, you can see deep into it, and you can also reflect things in a beautiful way. And so stillness, or savoring, can give us the ability to do that. Like in this photo here, this came from after a moment of stillness. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So in this whole space of Zen and the art of seeing, of combining this idea of peace and calm, of how we see the world, I want to focus in on Zen in just a couple slides here. But I want to highlight, let me just see 1 second. Well, oops. My little window is blocking my words here, but I'm going to try to read around it. So hopefully I can do that. But that Zen is not an ideology, but a way of, what is it, that word there, Derek? Maybe you can read it. I can't read my own slides. I can't find my mouse.
And Chris, I'll just let you know, you can, if you move the Zoom windows out of the way, because we
How
can't
do I
see them.
move them
So
out of the way, though? I can't.
you should be. Oh, let me see.
My cursor's gone.
You want me to fill in and do and voiceover for you on this?
Yeah, do voiceover. How
I
about, will you
got
read
you.
these 3 things? This will be fun.
I
Yeah,
got you.
do it.
Zen is not an ideology, but a way of living. Zen is something we are, true nature, and something we do, practice, through which we can realize the joy of being. The practice of Zazen, did I say that right?
Yeah,
Zazen?
you said that. That's
All
it.
right. The practice of Zazen, meditation, is a way of realizing the non dualistic, vibrant, subtle, and interconnected nature of life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So just reiterating that Zen is really a way of being, it's a way of living, and it's tapping into, kind of this true nature of who we are. It's something we practice, and then it leads to joy and the art of living in many ways. And the word Zen comes from the word Zazen, which literally means seated meditation. And seated meditation is a way to kind of help us realize subtlety, tap into intuition, and also interconnectedness. And so while there are probably maybe 15 core ideas in Zen, I'm just highlighting 3. One of them is this idea of being still in meditation. Another one is mindfulness, which is deep presence, really, and being mindful of what's going on. And then integration is a big part of Zen, which is art and daily life. So for example, a Zen master would say, when you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. Which at first is like, okay, yeah, of course. But really, most of us, when we wash the dishes, we're worrying about something else. We're listening to a podcast. We're doing like 6 things at once. And what Zen kind of invites us to do is just be present in what we're doing, and to have that deep presence as we go. And so with those things in mind, I want to share a couple of Zen stories. This first one I'll read here, which is, or maybe I'll just highlight, but there was a Japanese Zen master, and he this university professor was going to visit him, and he served him tea. And so he's pouring this visitor's cup full of tea, and he just keeps on pouring. The Zen master does. The professor who's visiting the Zen master watches it overflow, and he's like, hey, it's overfull, like no more will go in. And then the Zen master says, in classic Zen way, you're full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? And so there's this concept in Zen Buddhism of emptiness, of being an empty cup. And And in this way, I mean, this is my own interpretation of it. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it's like we are the cup. So it's not like we get rid of the cup. There's still beingness of who we are. But in photography, if we can become empty and let go of expectation and let go of an idea of what something should or shouldn't be, it gives us this beginner's mindset, this chance to see new, to see with fresh eyes, to go back to Proust's quote about this new way of seeing the world. And so for me, that means like the photograph on the left was captured it's like outside of a casino in Las Vegas, really kind of gross, ugly area, but had a deep, meaningful moment with someone. So my dog Daisy wants to come in, so I'm going to let her in because she'll keep scratching the door. One second here. And if I had my cup full, I'd be like, oh my gosh, Las Vegas. I do not like Las Vegas. How am I going to capture something deep and meaningful here? But if I just empty the cup and be like, you know what, let me be open. Same thing, the photo on the right, doing street portrait, just walking around New York with someone. And I love that image. But both of these images came from being an empty cup. And of course, as photographers, sometimes we have to have a clear vision. We have to have an idea. And I think that's even a Zen concept. It's not like we do one thing and nothing else, but there's a duality to what we do. This is another street portrait. This is a poet, Young Pueblo. And one of my favorite poems by him is this one, is that a human is as deep as the ocean, but most of us only spend time getting to know the surface. And I think the surface in a way is kind of like a full cup. You see someone, you're like, oh, they're like a tall, muscular guy, and they have a beard, and okay, great, I know what to do. Or let's say it's more of a landscape. Oh, classic Eastern, or Eastern Sierras, mountain lake. But it's like, no, let's empty that. Like, what really is this? What's really going on here? What's going on in me? What am I resonating with? What am I connecting with? What am I not connecting with? And then when you have that openness, it can give us the ability to almost receive like a gift, like that tea being filled into the cup. Other ways, it's when we're doing stuff like this. This is a roof of a car. This was my very first Sony camera. And I walked outside of my studio at the time and I was like, I got to take a picture of something. So I took a picture of the car. And the first picture of the car was just like a blue car. It was like a blue Nissan Sentra or something, like a really dumb car. And not interesting. And I was like, okay, Chris, and what I was doing is emptying the cup and then letting something else emerge. And I love this photo for whatever reason. I think partially it was my first time shooting mirrorless, my first time shooting Sony. It was a really new thing. And this was years and years ago, but it stands as a reminder for me to be that empty cup. Other times, this was in Italy, and it was a countryside Italian farmhouse. I took a picture of the house, and I was like, I don't think the house is really that interesting. I've seen that picture before, but then I just like, oh my gosh, look at all these colors, and again, so that these are almost like gifted images. They almost emerge in a way. And I think that can come from that Zen concept. This is photographing a bride, which I don't really necessarily like doing, or like, oh, a bride in a white dress. But it's like, no, maybe there's something more there. Another Zen story. Two men visit a Zen master. And maybe for this one, I'm just going to exit out of my screen here and stop sharing just so I can do a little FaceTime and tell this story. And again, those of you who are familiar with Zen know that I may be, I'm reading these stories in my own voice. I'm not doing them exactly as the tradition shares. But with this one is like two guys visit. So I'm using my own language. So hopefully everyone can kind of hang with that. But two guys visit a Zen master, and one of them says to Zen master, hey, I'm considering moving to this town. Should I move here? And the Zen master says, well, and he says, well, what's it like? What are the people like? And the Zen master says, well, what is your old town like? And what are the people like there? He's like, oh, in my own town, everyone is so busy. They're so selfish. They're so self-absorbed. It's just like, there's just so much anger and strife. And And then the Zen master says, well, it's the same here in this town. You shouldn't move here. And then the next guy gets his visit with the Zen master and says, I'm considering moving to this town. What are the people like? Should I move here? And he says, what was your town like? And he says, well, in my previous town, that people are so generous. They're so kind. They're so loving. There's just such a rich community. And the Zen master says, well, the same is here in this town. And it's the whole idea is that who we are and how we approach life, how we relate to things, we bring that with us. And what's going on inside, you're going to find that as we go to wherever we go. And so the Zen concept really helps us say, like, let's not totally go external, even external like happiness, or external like I'll get the best shot. I call it if only thinking. If only I have a great model, if only I'm in New York, if only I'm in Italy, if only this or that, like the external, versus saying, you know what, I'm in this like weird back alley in Las Vegas. I'm gonna be open to what's here, or I'm gonna bring me into this scenario. So I'll pause there because I've told a couple Zen stories. Those are some fun ones, and talked about some different concepts. Derek, my man, my brother,
Look,
what's coming in on your end?
well, we do have a couple questions, so
Okay.
I'm gonna share the platform here with Sally joining us on YouTube. Says this is a great approach. The photography is a way of meditation. Do you feel creative photos help with your Zen practice?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, and thank you, Sally, for that. And you can obviously see that my photos aren't of Zen gardens or um, of, let's say if you were to Google Zen, you're not going to see that Chris Orwig photography. So, and I don't think that's your question, but just kind of clarifying that for a moment, but yet my photos are full of Zen, and that's that inner presence and peace. And so, yes, Sally, when I capture a photograph that really has that connection, when I was present, like with a poet, we're in New York, there's construction, we're under a construction overhang, it is like noon, it's so busy, he's walking somewhere, but we have this like deep, wonderful Zen moment, for lack of a better word, or for on topic with a talk. And it makes me realize, ooh, I want to live more like that. So it's like I want to do that, and then the photographs help remind me, yes, more of that. And I think the same thing is true of, let's say, if someone really loves skiing and they take beautiful skiing and snowboarding photos, they see their photos and are like, ooh, I want to do more of that sport. So photography, the feedback loop that photography creates really can help us cultivate what we value, who we are, and who we want to become. And so when I teach younger photographers, which I've done for a long time, I often ask them questions like, what kind of world ecosystem do you want to be in? So like one of my students, he just loved the beach, he loved surf culture. So he ended up doing a lot of that photography, as opposed to, he could have gone to New York and done studio photography, but he just hates being indoors. He hates the studios, And so it's like, yeah, think about that. Or other people who love landscape photography, and that the photography gets them in the landscape, and then the other landscape they learn about gets them out there, and then the photograph reminds them of what that experience was like. So Sally, you're totally onto it.
And I think, Chris, I love that you've opened up that definition of Zen for us, because a lot of us, myself included, you think Zen, and what do you automatically think? You think like the sound of a water trickling into a
Yes.
pond with
Bamboo.
leaves.
Yeah.
And like just relax. And I'm like, as you're talking, I'm processing it, and I'm like, no, you've broadened what Zen, like Zen is purpose, it's meaning, it's
Yes.
really tapping into the power of an image. It could be an image out on the street,
Yeah.
and there's noise and there's all this, but when you look at the image, especially in particular your images, I feel the images. It doesn't mean that they're not all like peaceful, like
Yeah.
images, but I feel you come through in the image. You as the artist, you as the creator come through in those images. And it's more about the connection with the person. I tell you this all the time. Your portraits, when I look at your portraits, it's like you get everybody right in the right zone. And it's that connection. It's the difference between I really captured a piece of this person and a piece of their soul, and I just took a photo of them, and it might look good. It's deeper than being photogenic and not photogenic. It's deeper than having good light. It's taking a photo and you look at it and you're like, wow, you really captured me.
Yeah.
I think that could be the greatest compliment that people will say is not I look good in this photo, but you captured me. Like you, I love when I have a photo that captures my essence.
Yes. And I'll just add to that too, and thank you. But is like, I think another concept of Zen, and I like how you're getting, I'm trying to open this up. And part of Zen is being integrated into real life. And so one of my friends, a meditation teacher, says, you don't meditate to get better at meditation, you meditate to get better at life. And I think the practice of Zen, we can practice it to get better at life. And also that then spills over into photography. But that was a side note, what I was going to say. But what I was going to get at when you're talking about that was there's that side of bringing it into what we do and the connection to with the portrait subjects, but it also is that idea of being even keeled. So if you say someone's like so Zen, like something really bad happened and you're like, wow, like their kid was like having a fit and they just dealt with it so well. You're like, that dude's really Zen. I would have like flipped my lid. I think photography is like just a series of problems, right? It's problem
Yeah.
solving. And so like when we just get super bent out of shape, or when I do, like, oh my gosh, I forgot this lens, or oh, the light just changed, or oh, whatever. But if we're like, okay, yes, that's happening, but let me take a breath. Oh, I can also do this, right? And so it's like it shows up in our images, but it's also kind of like tactical. It's like a
Yeah.
really good skill. It's like a sailboat that doesn't flip over. I think some of us as photographers were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! Oh, now it's not. Oh, great! Oh, no, oh, that guy pushed me out of the way. I was shooting the concert, and they stepped in front of me." And the people are great photographers. You hang out with them enough, and you're like, "Yeah, the person pushed you out of the way, but then they found this new vantage point. They snuck over here. The security guard let them in, and they got this photo no one else got. And they got it because they had that inner stability, right? And they
Yeah.
cultivated that, which is rad. And that's where I think, and we can be goofy with that. We can even, I think, I mean, this is broadening it more, but we can be like, oh my gosh, that didn't work. We can just be like, that really didn't work. Okay, and it's not. I'll talk about anger a little bit later, but it's not like being so angry something didn't work. It's laughing, it's having peace, it's a sense of calm. It's like, okay, let me roll with this. So let me
Totally.
keep going because we have
Yes,
slides, and
definitely.
we'll jump back too. There's more. This is so fun to have this both ways. Um, and with the two guys visiting the Zen master, really this idea that who we are shapes what we see and what we experience ultimately. And that's why people can go to beautiful places and have horrible times, or vice versa. They can go somewhere uninteresting and make it fascinating. And those are the photographers I really enjoy following and I'm inspired by. Anais Nin put it this way, that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. Our vision really comes from who we are and what's going on inside. Shakespeare said it a different way. He said, nothing is or isn't, but thinking makes it so. So this power of thinking really shapes what we see. And so I want to talk about that related to gear and subject matter. So here I have an instrument, and we don't really, I mean, we could do interactive. People could put in the chat if they want to. Maybe if a couple people even could do that, that would be great. Is this a violin or a fiddle? And Derek, if you see any answers, you could read them, or you and I could just talk about that for a second. Is this a violin or a fiddle? What is your vote?
Let's see event space view. I'm gonna say it's a fiddle.
Okay.
And Danny says violin.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Well, and I'll dig into that. And the instruments are the same, but the distinction is how we play them. And so it's like kind of hard to know, right? And so the violin, it's formal, it's classical, you sheet music, it's orchestra, Mozart, Beethoven, concert hall. Fiddle, it's informal, it's down to earth, it's folk, it's country, it's bluegrass, you do improv, there's folk music traditions, there's dance. And this to me is one of the most crazy things ever that illustrates that Shakespeare point, is that it's literally the same thing. It's just a matter of like how we approach it. And so the picture doesn't give enough clues to really help us know like how is someone going to pick this up. But I think if we apply this to our camera, it can be kind of interesting that our mindset, our thinking, our own internal like compass, right, can be like, well, I use this formally, classically, in these kind of ways and do this stuff. Or no, for me, I'm a little bit my camera's more of a fiddle, right? It's down to earth and folky, all that kind of stuff. And it's not that one's right or wrong, but it's that our thinking literally shapes our world. The creative act is same. And I think this distinction comes to an intention. So if you're writing a legal contract, it's formal, it's classical, proper grammar. But if you're writing a poem, it's informal, it's down to earth, it's folksy, it's free form, it's imaginative, it's evocative, it's emotive, all the things. Or if you're writing an email to your boss or an email to your partner, or a love letter, right? And all the things, the intention changes the craft. And so what we have to start asking ourselves is how we see our gear, what is our intention, and how do we want to use it? Again, what I'm trying to do is tie this to the Zen concept of taking the inward journey. And if we can take that inward journey and start to tap into and tune into that, it can shape how we see. This is a photograph from a long time ago. I think, I don't even know, but maybe 15 years ago or something. But the singer-songwriter Seal asked me to teach him Lightroom. So I went over to his house and we were sitting there at his computer. And he was talking about digital versus film. And he shoots both. And at the time, it was like kind of a popular conversation. And he said, when I shoot with my digital camera, I open the images up in Lightroom and I look for the flaws and the mistakes. So digital means fix mistakes. When I shoot with film, I embrace the flaw. And so it was like his intention or his thinking shaped how he dealt with the content he was creating. And this isn't about digital or film, but it's about how we can have these mindsets that shape us. And one of the ways I think we can learn from film photography is this concept of wabi-sabi. And Zen Buddhists use this symbol, I think you pronounce it Enzo, for their version of wabi-sabi. And this circle kind of points this idea of how there are imperfections in existence, to appreciate and understand things for a brief moment, and how imperfect they can be. And the idea of wabi-sabi, it's a Japanese concept, but if you dig deeper into it, there's a great book, Wabi-sabi for Artists. Something else, the title I'm not remember, but the author is Leonard Cohen. He says that wabi-sabi is the beauty of things imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. I'm going to give you a little bit more of a definition if you want to screenshot this, but wabi-sabi finds beauty in the midst of humble, rustic, and imperfect things. Quietness, it denotes simplicity and stillness. Sabi helps us appreciate things that have patina or the passage of age. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is that often it is those imperfect frames, those ones with the flaws, that are more interesting and more appealing. And I think Zen can help us to embrace that. So wabi-sabi like vessel would be something like this. It would be something that's imperfect, that isn't totally, it's just not perfect. Wabi-sabi in interior design on the left, or a garden, or maybe a vase with some plants. It kind of celebrates this idea that those things which show us imperfection feel authentic, feel honest, feel real. My daughter loves Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is so authentic and honest and real. She's embraced wabi-sabi, I think, in her life. And so we love that. And so as photographers, what I think we can do is learn from this, is just get into this whole idea of like, okay, Shakespeare said nothing is or isn't but thinking makes it so. Like, how do we see things? And where is that coming from? And so just to highlight a few things, like someone could see, I have all these little goofy icons, but they could see the guy with a beard. I remember doing a shoot where the model came with a beard and the art director was like, oh, great, another guy with a beard. And so for him, he saw the beard as like a problem. You could be in the desert landscape and be like, oh, great, another sky without clouds. A lot of landscape photographers love clouds, right? And so our inner state, it then shapes what and how we see and what's going on in front of us, even though like all of these little icons, we could talk about what we see in them and we would all see very different things. But this idea of Buddhism is to try to just say like, yes, I see this. And so then, okay, so what? So there's no clouds. Okay, so great. I notice there's no clouds. I notice that's frustrating me, and then what do you do? And what is your intention within that? For example, I'm going to throw out some intentions. Let's say you want to create art as a photographer, and you're like, well, I could kind of follow the intention of art. It washes away the dust of everyday life, like Picasso said. Or I could say art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time, as Thomas Merton says. Or Pam Holland said, art speaks where words are unable to explain. So maybe art's like this voice for us. Or Van Gogh said, art is about this idea of always searching for something and never fully finding it. Or maybe I want to create art like in the intention of Rumi, the poet, who said, be a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder, help someone's soul heal. I want to create art that has this healing component to it. And so the reason I'm throwing out these ideas is just to say that we could have lots of different intentions, and there isn't one that's better or worse, but that intention might shape how we approach something and what's there and what we communicate. And so for me, Zen, this idea that we've been talking about, it reminds us of the importance of our inner state and intention. This is a guy who's a yogi, meditator, and renowned surfer, and he's just so comfortable with who he is. And he always reminds me of this quote by Steinbeck. And the quote is that he was at ease with himself, and that put him at ease with the world. That's kind of like the two guys that visit the Zen master, right? The one who's kind of at ease with their community, connected with them, they can move somewhere else and they're at ease with that, right? But this sense of ease can be something that helps us convey ideas, which really, I think photography is about conveying these invisible things, again, these things that are felt within our heart. What I've found as a teacher is that photography is truly autobiographical. It's an outward expression of an inward reality. So if we combine that inward reality, like, oh my gosh, I'm such a dummy, I don't know what I'm doing, and we photograph the girl with the ponytail with that intention, that frustration shows up in the picture. On the other hand, if we have the shaka and we're like aloha, peace, loving, kind, compassion, that energy shows up in the picture. So the reality of this autobiographical work that we're doing as photographers is that it really is showing what's going on inside of us. And I have looked at thousands of portfolios, and I can look at a portfolio and tell someone their fears, their dreams, their sorrows, all the things. And they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, because the photographs show it. You look at enough photographs, you learn that it's really a connection to who we are. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh put it this way, that our quality of being determines our quality of doing. As photographers, we are doers. We are pushing a button. We are going out there. We are capturing. We are connecting. We are, photographing objects and people and things and places and moments. And if we want to uplevel our photography, what I'm offering in this talk is, yes, carpe diem, go for it, go do things, but also explore, how can I cultivate something in my inner being, quality there? And that if I can do that and combine that with the carpe diem side of going out and getting it, and the technique and the camera and the lenses, boom, magic. And I think part of this is it makes life better, it makes our work better, and it just can add more to what we do. And I think a lot of this hinges on this idea of taking a breath. And I'll take a pause here in just a second, because we're getting close. And actually, let me take a pause right there and just see, Derek, any questions, or should I keep going? And I'm fine either way, but just kind of want to check in at this.
We'll let you round it out, and then
Okay.
we'll open up.
Going.
So if anybody does have any questions, marinate on them now. I know we have one waiting in the wings, but
Okay.
We'll let you wrap it up, and then we'll come back for some Q&A.
Okay, great. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this idea that anger can be like a potato, and if you bite it, it's bitter. But if you light a fire, boil some water, get to know your anger, like, oh, I'm really angry about this. I'm like, well, why am I angry about this? What is this trying to tell me? Maybe I should pay attention to it. That it can become a part of a nutritious meal. And I think a lot of that comes from, rather than just biting the potato or just taking the photo, it's like, take a breath. Okay, what's going on? Like, okay, I'm here at this beautiful landscape. Let me just take a breath. Oh my gosh, look at how beautiful this is. And so for me, when I take portraits of people, almost every time I ask them to close their eyes and take a breath. And I could do a whole book on this. It's kind of interesting. So what comes before every great portrait I've ever taken is, hey, let's take a breath, let's close our eyes. I do it together with them. And we take that breath, maybe do it a couple times. And then there's that moment of connection. And it's like that pause, which leads to something. Here's a model, a commercial shoot out on set. I'm just like, hey, take a breath, And then she relaxes. This is a yoga teacher, same kind of thing. Close your eyes, take a breath, just enjoy the sun. And then she's relaxed. And then we create beautiful images. These were other yoga teachers, and you can just feel it in their spirit. And part of what I'm trying to do in my photography is offer presence. And again, Thich Nhat Hanh says that when we offer presence with mindfulness, people bloom. They show up in a different way. And so what I've found is that's true in so many different situations. And again, so with portraits for me, you can always see right before this was an eye close and a breath, an eye close and a breath, an eye close and a breath. And part of that allows people a moment of reflection. Like in this case, the subject was, we were talking about this, we were talking about things that were sad, and she was showing me this painting of this crying cowboy that she's just kind of fallen in love with. And she's this great painter, kind of celebrated in our town. And it allowed for sadness to come into the scene. And I love this portrait of her with her crying cowboy. So recap, Zen is anchored in this tradition of Buddhism. We kind of emphasized this idea of seated meditation, which I guess I didn't talk about very much, but this idea often before shoots, I'll sit down, I'll close my eyes, I'll take a breath, I'll get grounded. So grounding through that, it's also part of a daily practice. Mindfulness, just being present in the moment, integrating that kind of presence into what we're doing, and then expanding it to be beyond this Buddhist tradition, just this cultivating the sense of peace and calm. And the art of seeing is really observing and perceiving with this heightened sense of awareness and appreciation, this deeper gratitude. And so for me, this idea of when we can integrate that into our photography, it can lead to great results. And maybe if you just need one little step, what I would encourage is this idea of taking a breath. When you're out shooting, capturing, whatever content it is, just do a little pause. And that pause can help us be less reactive and more kind of thoughtful and responsive. And it can really lead to amazing things. And thank you so much for this. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so we can go back and we can hit any questions that are coming up and go from there.
Yes, definitely. We're going to start it off. We had a question that came in from Dave on YouTube asking, what technique do you use to help center yourself so you can understand yourself, your location, and scene?
Yeah. So one of my yoga teachers always says, at the end of her classes, she always says, notice what you notice. And then, or no, excuse me, let me rewind that. She says, your practice begins now. And so like you take a yoga class, you think you're done, but it's like, no, now it really starts. Like in yoga, union, connection, how do you stay connected? Then when you're out there, she just says this phrase of notice what you notice. So as a photographer, I'll just like, notice what I notice. Like, oh, I'm like really stressed right now. Oh my gosh, it's kind of windy. It's actually kind of cold. So just like mindfulness is just, it's so crazy simple, but it's like, wow, this person looks nervous. Or man, my camera bag is like really heavy on my shoulders and it's making my neck hurt. Just notice that. And then be like, you know what? I noticed that, so I'm going to set that down. So it's not like some enlightened moment, but it is very, very simple. And it's just tuning in, like you said, grounding to what's going on in me, in the environment, the person, the landscape, whatever. And to try to do that in a way that's true to you. I think some people are more, let's say, spiritually in tuned, and for them they can like feel energy of mountains and of lakes and of land. And so for them, grounding is maybe that. For someone else, it might be like, wow, those are pointy rocks, and both are great. And we're like, wow, pointy rocks, kind of jagged, huh? This is a picture with jagged rocks in it. And then also smooth water, jagged, smooth, and it's not like some spiritual awakening, but it's that grounding in it versus squirrel, beautiful landscape. Oh my gosh, light, whoa, go. Which again, I think is important in photography. I think sometimes we have to like carpe diem the heck out of a moment. You're just like, the light's about to change. You run up to it. You just take the picture. There's no grounding. There's no nothing, and that's okay. I think that's part of our craft. But what I'm kind of offering is adding to that, this other side. And then sometimes it might be running up there. Oh my gosh, take the picture and be like, okay, Chris, take a breath. Oh, wait a second. Trees, pointy rocks, lake, and mountains. And then it's like that leads to something, right?
Yeah, and I think finding, like what you're saying, you have to find your own zen, your own
Yes.
what is your own meaning of zen? Is it connecting to yourself? Is it immersing yourself with your environment? Is it pushing your boundaries into something else? Some of us can find or tap into a new level of it by going outside of what we normally are and breaking in. So for the quiet person, it might be immersing yourself in a more social environment and opening yourself up, and through that you get in touch with a different side of yourself. I think it's that different definition for everyone for what helps them connect to who they are. I think that's the
Yeah.
hardest thing. It's so hard for a lot of people to find themselves. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just float in the ether, and it's just, which can't blame them. It's life
Yeah.
is a struggle. Life is a hassle. It's a lot of times it's just like you try to keep on the hamster wheel and paying bills and
Yeah.
taking jobs and doing this and doing that, and we don't really hit the pause button and have that intentionality in life. And I think that for me has been a big defining factor is, what is my intention? I think about it all the time as a person and as a photographer. Am I living without intent? Am I taking photos without intent? I've learned that the photos that I feel more strongly about and that I love creating are photos that I create with intent. And I've taken that approach into my life where it's, am I doing something? What is my purpose for doing it? Am I doing it just to do it? Am I doing it for a specific reason? And what is that specific reason? And how does that specific reason help get me closer to where I'm trying to get to?
Yes. Yes. And I think back to what you were saying earlier, like it happens to people, for example, in all areas of our life. Like me as a parent, I want to be kind and compassionate and creative and adventurous. And the other night at dinner, my daughter was like, Dad, you're so stressed out right now. And I was, and then my other daughter was like, yeah, you're so stressed. And I was like, I wasn't even aware that I was stressed. Like here, I think I'm like tuned in, aware, or like I have an intention of like being this kind of parent or this kind of photographer, or whatever the thing is. But we all fall off the rails, and I think the beautiful thing about Zen is like, yeah, you fell off the rails and you just notice what you notice, which is like, okay, I'm obviously stressed. Like, why am I stressed? And I kind of realized like I just had this like really weird pain in my neck and my back, and something that happened that day. And I was like, and physical discomfort can lead to that. And then I was stressed about something else that was going to happen the next day. And I was like, I didn't even know that I was transmitting stress, right? And I think as photographers, I watch students a lot. They transmit a lot of stress to their subjects. I do portraiture, of course. And what that is like, did I bring the right camera? Do I have enough battery life? Do I do cards? Am my lens clean? All this kind of stuff. And I've talked about this before, but they do. I mean, the most obvious way they transmit stress is they take the picture, then they look at the camera in the back, or they ask me, if it's mentoring, they like, is this any good? And I'm just like, oh, you just transmitted a lot of stress to your subject. And just becoming mindful, right? And then trying to like realign with the intention of like, oh, I just want people to feel kindness. I want them to feel encouraged, or maybe the energy is like, I want them to feel they're rock stars, and you want them to feel powerful and strong, and that's your intention. And if I'm making them feel weak, like maybe I was photographing this one pro surfer, and I did a high camera height, and he kind of was like looking up the camera. It was almost like he had this like little puppy dog like looking up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not aligning with my intention, which is to show this guy in an authentic way. But once you go a little too high with your camera height, you're kind of looking up, you can cross that. But if you're sort of like right here, yeah, that's connected. So anyway, I think the point of that is what you were saying exactly. We all got to find it. Just like with meditation, some people do walking meditation. Some people meditate on a cushion. Some people meditate on a class or in a class. Some people are swimmers and they love the meditative nature of swimming, which is like burning a lot of calories and big movement. But the key is like, okay, who am I? What's going on? This stage of life, how do I bring some of this in? And if I can do that, what I've seen with my students at least, life's better. which is kind of my goals with this session. Better life, better living, better work. How cool is that? you
Right.
know.
Well, Chris, we're going to round it out with one final
Okay.
question here from
Yeah.
Elizabeth asking, did you have to reach inside yourself and develop patience as you learned this?
Immensely. I think I still do all the time, to the point of like my kids saying I was stressed. I was like, I thought I was I'm pretty self-aware, but I was like, wow, I guess I'm not. Like I had no idea that I was conveying that. So yeah, so a lot of patience, and a lot of, the poet Young Pueblo in particular, he says like, how can we love others if we haven't loved ourselves? So a lot of it is like extending love to self, and then that, helps extend it to others. Um, and that usually means when you make mistakes. And I think in photography, we make mistakes so often. It's so easy to fall into the trap, like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot, or I can't believe that, or that's such a bad photo, or they don't want me to photograph them. Why am I even here? What am I doing? And just being like, yeah, like that's coming up, and cut myself some slack like I would a friend, and develop that. And that's the beauty of this. I think it's lifelong. I don't think the thing I like about Zen is it's a practice, and there's no arrival. There's no like, I'm a Zen Buddhist. There's no like phrase you say and then you are. It's more like, no, cultivate mindfulness, tune in. There's different levels. We highlighted a couple things. So yeah, I think whoever mentioned that, kind of such a great way to end is, um, yeah, like be patient. And wouldn't you say, Derek, too, with photography, that's like the key, right? I mean, like we want to grow so fast, so quick, but it's like,
Like, where are you in a rush to? There's
yeah,
no, there's no finish line.
there's no finish line. Yeah, and your
No.
photos at 60 should be better than 20, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we should always evolve. Like it's always evolving. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm a good photographer or something.
And it's funny you say that because I've been thinking about it a lot lately because I stopped posting online.
Okay.
I stopped taking images. I started living more. And the images that I do take, I stopped focusing. I stopped taking or making images. I started just taking snapshots with my cell phone, with whatever camera I have, and taking little video clips. And I've I found that it has made me way more present to just live. And I'm still gonna get my little moments here or there, but I needed a break. I needed to recharge the batteries. I've taken a whole new stance. My life is, you know, I I've taken an approach. Sound like
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound completely crazy here, probably, but even as far as how I light my apartment, the mood I set, how I decorate, when I open the window, and when every little thing. It's like I treat my life like a movie set because look, we create that mood for our images, right? And what does that do to us? We look at them and we feel them. We feel a certain way. So now it's like when I'm in the movie set, I relax when I go in. That's, I've created my own little Zen space where I sculpt each part of my life around, okay, how do I take this task and make it more enjoyable? Or how do I dread this task less? And I think that's led me to ultimately be happier when the camera's down so that I'll want to pick up the camera. If I'm stressed and I'm not enjoying life, I'm not enjoying taking images. It's no longer a release for me. Me, the person supersedes me, the photographer. So
I love that.
I don't want to leave it without Harry slipped in a comment here. I
Okay.
think this is a great comment. He says the advice to slow down cannot be overstated. Hearing you repeat it reinforces the need to pause and let the moment help to create the image. And I think that's again beautifully articulated, Harry. That pause lets the moment help create the image. I think
Yeah.
that's a beautiful way to word it.
It is. I love that. I love that. There's this place in Kauai, one of my favorite places. I have this little sticker on my desk. It says slow yourself down. And as a reminder to myself. But yeah, I think it's the difference between like forcing it, the cup is full kind of approach, or empty cup, and receiving it as a gift. And in portraiture in particular, I've come to realize it's all a gift. It's a gift in the moment and all the things coming together, and in other moments as well. And that, I don't know, adds more gratitude, more joy, more everything. And so yeah, I'm with you that that can't be overstated. And I think the way to integrate it in is just, I mean, a Zen Buddhist would say breathe, or you know, a musician might say it's a pause between the notes, or, but just to like, yeah, take the picture and then just be like, just take a breath. Let me just, what's going on here? Like, wow, how cool in this world to be alive. What a gift. And then continue. And I love the simplicity of that. And same thing, like even when I write emails, I try to do that as well. You know, like you write an email and be like, okay, let me, especially if it's like a heated email, let me just pause, let me take a breath. Okay, I don't want to say it like that. You know, you rewrite it. Obviously, if it's really heated, you don't send it that day. You take a bigger pause, right?
Yeah.
And deeper art maybe has those bigger pauses, those like fine artists that like study something for decades and they just have like really settled, they've settled in, they're really slowing down so we can see deeply. So yeah, that's a great comment. So thanks, Harry.
Yes, definitely. And for those of you out there who are looking for more of this conversation, Chris is going to be back December 7th. There's a
Yeah.
Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. He's going to be talking about finding joy, passion, and purpose through photography. So I want to thank Chris. Look, I want to thank you for your friendship. You've been a wonderful mentor to me, whether you realize it or not, in life and photography. So I want to thank you for that and always coming
Vice
on.
versa, but keep going.
Thank you. And you always bless our channel and our viewers with such wisdom and experience and just overall positive vibes. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank Sony for always hosting these wonderful events. And Chris, we'll see you again on December 7th. I hope you are
Okay.
well and continue these positive vibes off the Zoom and into the real world. And to all you viewers out there, I hope you guys are doing the same. We'll see you back next time on another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Catch y'all next time.